My son, he's in room 402. They say he needs the surgery now. Who will save him?
Its private wing was silent, except for the squeak of expensive leather shoes against the polished marble. Dr. Julian Vane didn't walk, he glided. He was a man of precision. A man of gold. Around his wrist sat a $50,000 Patek Philippe that told more than just the time. It told the world that Julian Vane had arrived. If you love stories of legendary justice and the rise of the humble, do us a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. And give this video a like. It helps our community grow and ensures these lessons reach the people who need them most. Today's story is one you will never forget. It's a story about a man who forgot where he came from and the penniless patient who was sent to remind him. But as he passed the waiting area of the ICU, a sound broke his focus. It was the sound of a woman weeping. Not a loud, dramatic cry, but the dry, racking sobs of someone who had run out of tears. She was dressed in a faded Ankara wrap, her hands calloused, her feet tucked into $5 plastic sandals that were coated in the red Georgia clay. "Please," she gasped, reaching out to touch the sleeve of Julian's pristine white coat. "My husband, he's in room 402. They say he needs the surgery now. They say only you can do it." Julian didn't even stop. He didn't even look at her face. He pulled his arm away, as if her touch were a contagion. He looked at the clipboard held by his assistant. "Has the insurance been verified?" Julian asked, his voice as cold as a scalpel. "No, doctor," the assistant whispered. He was brought in as a John Doe. No ID. No wallet. Just an old man in rags hit by a truck. Julian stopped then. He turned, his eyes shielding any hint of humanity. He looked at, "But he'll die in the ambulance," she screamed. Julian checked his watch. He had a dinner reservation at a 5-star steakhouse in Buckhead. "Then I suppose he should have worked harder in life," he said. He turned his back on her. He walked away, leaving her collapsed on the floor, her screams echoing off the cold marble. He thought he had won. He thought he had protected his precious success rate and his time. But Julian Vane was about to learn that the man in room 402 wasn't just a penniless victim. He was the key to Julian's entire existence. And by the time he realized it, the heart monitor would be a flat, mocking line. Welcome back to Modernist Africa Folktale. If you are new here, we tell stories that the world tries to hide. We tell stories where the proud are humbled, where the invisible are finally seen, and where the payback isn't just a moment, it's a reckoning. We believe that your value isn't measured by your bank account, but by the echoes of your character when no one is watching. Let's go back to the beginning. To a place called Ajagunal and a boy who promised he would never be poor again. 30 years ago, Julian Vane wasn't a doctor. He was just Julian, a skinny boy with dusty shins and a hunger that lived in his bones. He grew up in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria. His father was a man named Samuel, a carpenter who worked 18 hours a day in the tropical heat, his back bent like a question mark. Also, Julian could attend the best missionary school in the city. Samuel used to say, "My son, a man's hands can build a house, but his heart must build the home. Never look down on a man unless you are reaching out to pick him up." Julian hated those words. To him, his father's humility looked like weakness. He hated the smell of sawdust on Samuel's clothes. He hated the way Samuel would bow his head to the rich men who paid him half of what his labor was worth. "I won't be like you," Julian told his father the day he received his scholarship to study medicine in America. "I'm going to be a king. I'm going to live in a house where the floors are made of glass and no one ever smells like sweat." Samuel hadn't been angry. He had just pulled a small worn wooden carving of a lion from his pocket, a gift he had spent months perfecting. He pressed it into Julian's hand. "Go then, my lion. But remember, the king of the jungle is the one who protects the pride, not the one who eats them." Julian had left that carving in the trash can at the Lagos airport. He didn't want a wooden lion. He wanted a gold one. Fast forward to the present day in Atlanta, Georgia. Julian Vane was the chief of neurosurgery at the most prestigious private hospital in the South. He was a star. He had been on the cover of Atlanta magazine 3 times. He drove a black Lamborghini Urus and lived in a 12,000 square foot mansion in Tuxedo Park. He was known as the ice surgeon. Not because of his steady hands, though they were flawless, but because he had no heart. He only took cases that were guaranteed to succeed. He only treated high net worth individuals. If you were a CEO, a senator, or a professional athlete, Julian Vane was your best friend. If you were a teacher, a bus driver, or a janitor, you didn't exist. On this particular Tuesday, Julian was in a foul mood. His luxury car had a small scratch on the rim, and his tailor had messed up the stitching on his custom-made Italian shirt. He paced his office, which was decorated with African art he didn't understand but bought because it looked expensive. There was a knock on the door. It was Sarah, a young resident who still had the naivety Julian had long ago scrubbed away. "Dr. Vane, I'm sorry to bother you, but the ER just sent up a critical case. Room 402. Subdural hematoma. It's a massive bleed. If we don't get him into the or in the next hour, he's gone." Julian didn't look up from his iPad. "Check the schedule, Sarah. I'm fully booked. I have the mayor's wife coming in for a consultation at 4. But the mayor's wife is just a routine checkup, sir. This man is dying. He's an elderly black man, looks like he was homeless or a day laborer. The police found him with nothing but..." Julian finally looked up. His eyes were like flint. "Sir, how many times do I have to tell you? This hospital is a business. We are not a charity ward. That man in 402 is a drain. He will take up a bed for 3 weeks. He will never pay the bill, and if he dies on my table, he ruins my perfect 99% success rating. The answer is no. Stabilize him and transfer him to Grady Memorial. Sir, he won't survive the transfer. He's 70 years old. He's fighting for his life." "Then let him fight somewhere else," Julian snapped. "I have a reputation to pay. Now get out and make sure the mayor's wife has the premium sparkling water in the waiting room." Sarah stared at him. For a second, her eyes held a look of pure disgust. "I used to want to be just like you, Dr. Vane. Now, I hope I never become you." She slammed the door. Julian scoffed. Amateurs, he thought. They think medicine is about saving people. Medicine is about power. He spent the next hour reviewing his stock portfolio. He watched the numbers go. He felt a sense of peace. Money was the only thing that didn't lie. Money didn't bleed. Money didn't ask for a discount. But as he prepared for his appointment with the mayor's wife, his phone buzzed. It was a restricted number. Usually Julian ignored these, but something told him to pick up. "Hello, Julian." The voice was weak, trembling. It was a voice he hadn't heard in 5 years. It was his mother calling from a village in Nigeria. "Mama? Why are you calling this line? Is everything okay?" "Julian, your father. He went to America. He didn't tell you because he knew you were busy. He wanted to surprise you. He saved his money for 5 years, selling his carvings, doing odd jobs, just to see his son one last time. He landed in Atlanta yesterday. He said he was going to walk from the bus station to your hospital. He wanted to see the building with your name on it." Julian's heart skipped a beat. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. "What are you talking about, Mama? He's in Atlanta? Why didn't he call a taxi? You know your father, Julian. He said he wanted to see the city you built. He had your address written on a piece of paper. Julian, he hasn't called me. He was supposed to call when he arrived at your office. Is he there? Is he with you?" Julian looked at his office door. He looked at the hallway leading to the elevators. "Mama, let me call you back," he whispered. He hung up. His hands were shaking. An old man. No ID. A bag of groceries. Hit by a truck. Julian began to run. He didn't glide this time. He sprinted. His $2,000 loafers skidded on the floor as he turned the corner toward the elevators. He didn't wait for the car. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He reached the 4th floor. He burst through the double doors of the intensive care unit. "Where is he?" Julian screamed at the nursing station. "The man from room 402. Where is he?" Sarah, the resident, looked up. She was holding a clipboard, her eyes red. "We're prepping the ambulance for the transfer, Dr. Vane. Just like you ordered. He's being wheeled out to the loading dock right now." "Stop them!" Julian roared. "Stop the transfer." He pushed past her, knocking a cart of supplies over. He ran toward the service elevators. The doors were closing. He jammed his hand between them, ignoring the pain as the sensors forced the doors back open. Inside was a gurney. On that gurney was a man covered in a thin white hospital. His face was obscured by an oxygen mask. His skin was the color of aged mahogany, covered in bruises and road rash. Julian reached out with trembling fingers. He pulled back the sheet. There on the man's wrist wasn't a Patek Philippe. There was no gold, but tight around the man's left thumb with a piece of dirty string was a small, worn wooden carving. It was a lion. Julian's knees hit the floor. The ice surgeon began to melt. "Dad," he whispered. "Dad, it's me." But the man in room 402 didn't answer. The heart monitor, the one that had been steady just moments ago, began to emit a long, high-pitched scream. Flatline. The sound of the flatline was a physical blow. It was the loudest silence Julian had ever heard. For a second, the world-famous neurosurgeon was gone. He was just a boy in the dust of Lagos again, watching his father's shadow disappear into the kitchen. "Clear," the ER nurse shouted, charging the paddles. "Get out of the way." Julian screamed. He shoved the nurse aside with a strength he didn't know he possessed. "That is my father. Move." The service elevator was a chaos of white coats and blue scrubs. The resident stood frozen. She had seen Julian Vane cold. He had seen him arrogant, but she had never seen him human. His expensive silk tie was dipped in the saline on the floor. His hands, usually so steady, were vibrating. "Julian, you can't," a voice boomed. It was Dr. Eris Thorne, the chief of medicine and the man who had hired Julian. Thorne had heard the commotion and ran to the loading dock. "Hospital policy, Julian. Your immediate family are emotionally compromised. You cannot operate on your own father." Julian turned on him, his eyes bloodshot, his face contorted. "If any other doctor touches him, he dies. You know that, Thorne. You hired me because I am the only one who can navigate a grade 4 hemorrhage. If you stop me, you are murdering him. The board will strip your license." Thorne yelled as the gurney was pushed back toward the oar. "Let them take it." Julian roared back. "I've spent my life building a name. Today I'm going to save a man." The doors 201 slammed shut. The next 6 hours were a descent into a different kind of hell. In the viewing gallery, the mayor's wife and the hospital board members sat in stunned silence. They had come to see the star surgeon perform a routine consultation. Instead, they were watching a man fight a war against death itself. Inside the oar, the atmosphere was suffocating. Julian didn't use the robotic assistance. He didn't use the laser scalpel. He worked with the old-school tools. His father, the king of the jungle, is the one who protects the pride, his father's voice whispered in the back of his mind. "Suction," Julian muttered. His voice was a rasp. "His pressure is dropping, doctor," the anesthesiologist warned. "We're losing him. The brain is swelling too fast." Julian didn't blink. A drop of sweat hit the floor. He didn't survive 70 years in the slums to die in a room with a gold-plated ceiling. Samuel Vane does not quit. And neither do I. Give me the microsutures. Minutes turned into hours. The sun began to set over the Atlanta skyline, casting long amber shadows across the hospital. Julian's back ached, the same ache his father used to feel after a day at the carpenter's bench. For the first time in his life, Julian understood that ache. It wasn't the ache of poverty. It was the ache of love. Finally, at 11:42 p.m., Julian stepped back. He dropped his forceps into the tray. The rhythmic beep-beep-beep of the heart monitor was steady. The bleed was gone. The pressure was normal. Julian walked out of the oar. He didn't wait for the applause of the residents. He didn't look at the board members. He walked straight to the locker room, sat on a cold wooden bench, and wept into his hands until his chest burned. 2 days later, Samuel Vane opened his eyes. He was in the VIP suite. The room Julian usually reserved for billionaires and kings. But the room was different now. The expensive flowers had been replaced by a simple bowl of oranges and the smell of cedarwood. Julian sat by the bed. He wasn't wearing his Patek Philippe. He wasn't wearing his $3,000 suit. He was wearing a simple pair of hospital scrubs, his hair uncombed. Julian, Samuel whispered, his voice like dry leaves. I'm here, Dad. Julian choked back a sob. I've been working, Dad. But I was building the wrong things. Samuel smiled, a slow, beautiful thing that illuminated the room. I saw you, Julian. Before the truck hit me, I was standing outside your hospital. I saw you walk out to your car. I saw a woman try to talk to you and I saw you look through her as if she were made of air. I was going to call out to you, but I was ashamed. I thought, my son has become a giant, but his heart has become a stone. Julian lowered his head. I almost let you die, Dad, because you didn't have a wallet, because I thought you were nothing. No one is nothing, Julian, Samuel said, his grip tightening on Julian's hand. The man who has nothing but his soul is richer than the man who has everything. But his mercy. I didn't come to America to see your glass floors. I came to see if you still remembered how to pray. That afternoon, the hospital board entered the room. Dr. Thorne was at the front, holding a manila envelope. Julian, Thorne said, his voice solemn. We've reviewed the footage. You broke every protocol in the book. You operated on a family member. You bypassed the insurance verification process for a John Doe. The board has made a decision. Julian stood up. He looked at his father, then back at the men in suits. I'll save you the trouble. I resign. Effective immediately. The board members exchanged looks. Thorne opened the envelope. Actually, Julian, we weren't going to fire you. We were going to give you a reprimand. But the mayor's wife, she saw everything from the gallery. He told the press that she had never seen a more human moment in medicine. The hospital's stock has tripled in 48 hours. They want to name the new charity wing after you. Julian looked at the star surgeon plaque on the wall. He looked at the window, overlooking the city where he had been a king. No, Julian said quietly. Don't name it after me. Name it after the carpenter who paid for my education with his sweat. And don't make it a wing. Make it the whole building. Because if this hospital can't treat a man without a wallet, then it isn't a hospital. It's a bank. And I'm done being a teller. Julian Vane did leave St. Jude's. But he didn't stop being a surgeon. 6 months later, a new clinic opened in College Park in the heart of the community where the penniless lived. It was called the Samuel Vane Healing Center. There were no marble floors. There were no glass elevators. But there was a line of people around the block, and no one was ever asked for an insurance card before they were asked for their name. Julian lived in a modest house 3 blocks away. He drove a 5-year-old. Every morning at 5 a.m. he woke up and had coffee with an old man who spent his days carving wooden lions for the children in the waiting room. And what of the ice surgeon? He was gone. In his place was a man who knew that a scalpel was only as good as the hand that held it, and a hand was only as good as the heart that moved it. As for Dr. Thorne and the board at St. Jude's, within a year their premium model began to fail. Without Julian's star power and with their reputation for greed exposed by the local news, their best doctors began to migrate to Julian's clinic. They wanted to feel what Julian felt, the weight of a life saved, not the weight of a check cashed. The woman in the Encore wrap? Her name was Mrs. Okoro. Her husband survived. Julian didn't just perform the surgery for free. He hired her as the head of patient outreach at the new clinic. She never had to weep on a marble floor. The lesson of today's story is one the world often forgets. Your position in life is a gift, not a right. Never be so high that you cannot see the people who helped you climb. Because one day the nothing you ignore might be the only thing that can save your soul. The man you think is penniless might be carrying the very treasure you lost along the way. Your value isn't in what you own, it's in who you protect. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the Samuel in your own life, do not keep it to yourself. Comment below with the word lion to show that you choose heart over gold. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of what truly matters. And before you go, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We have many more stories to tell. Stories of the humble who rise and the proud who learn the hard way.